All right, everybody, welcome back. Good afternoon, and we're doing some more linebacker work today. And this video, we're going to finish up the likely day two guys, the guys who are likely to go on that day two. We got two more of them. So let's just go ahead and jump right in on the linebackers, leading off with a guy who was really intriguing before the season started, and he didn't quite have that monster 2023 season, but when you step back and look at it, it was still really good. And I think there's enough here to say he should be a top 100 pick. And pretty much all the big boards have him in the top 100. So seems likely he goes there. But Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Yes, he is the son of the great Jeremiah Trotter, longtime Philadelphia Eagle. I think he ended his career in Tampa Bay. And his son is now entering the NFL from Clemson. That was a very star-studded defense that ended up not producing all that much last year, but Trotter was one of their best players. 21 years old, so still room for him to grow as a player. 6 feet tall, which is pushing it, right? 6 foot tall inside linebacker, that's a little bit questionable. 228 pounds is workable. We're, again, pushing it in terms of size. 31.5 inch arms, 9.25 inch hands. He's a smaller player, and there are some issues there. And I'm not here to dismiss those entirely. This may end up being a player who cannot quite keep up at the NFL level because he's a little too small, but there's a lot of stuff he does that might make up for it. Also, while he only did the 3-cone, the 20-yard split, and the bench press, none of his testing numbers were that great. 7.13 3-cone is really not impressive for a guy this size. His 20-yard shuttle was bad, and his bench press was, I mean, it doesn't need to be that good, but it wasn't good. So there's some red flags here already, but I don't think they undo some of the good stuff he does bring. And you can see that all the big boards have him in the third round, except for CBS and the Draft Network have him in the second. The mock draft, the NFL database has him in the third, and I think he's going to go there. Last 2 years, he's had relatively similar seasons. If you go down the line on both 2023, 2024, 2023, 2022, the numbers are almost identical. About 90 tackles, 14, 15 tackles for loss, 5 to 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 5 passes defensed. It's like a mirror image. PFF grade right around 86, 87. So 2 really consistently great years for Trotter at Clemson. So the things to like about him, I mean, the first most obvious thing is, I think, he comes from a football family, and I do think that stuff matters. I think that stuff really helps these guys succeed. So, roots in the NFL from his father. He's an extremely high football IQ player. He has a really strong understanding of coverages. He has a really strong understanding of run fits. He's a very smart football player, and his intelligence on the football field really makes up for some of his size issues. His short area quickness, I know it didn't show up at the combine, but his short area quickness and ability to just burst up to top speed makes him really hard to deal with on the blitz. Over the last 2 years, he's got what? Um, uh, excuse me, got a little bit of a cough today. 12 sacks total. That's a sack every other game on average, approximately. So great blitzer. Really hard to get a clean hit on him as a blocker. He's very slippery. Really hard to get a good, solid block on. He just slips on by, shuffles through, and finds a way to make a play on the ball. For a smaller guy, he hits with a good amount of force. He's a sound tackler as well, which hopefully will continue to work in the NFL. He does have the shorter arms, which make you wonder if he'll be able to keep it up with bigger players in the NFL. He's also capable of handling zone coverage assignments. Looked pretty good in coverage for the most part at Clemson. So that's kind of the positive wrap on Trotter. Now, there's no getting around the fact that he is undersized, and I'm not convinced that it's going to work in the NFL the way it worked in college. He has a little bit of an uphill battle. And some players in NFL history have overcome that uphill battle. Will Trotter be one of them? He's got a great chance, but I'm not going to sit here and ignore the obvious issue. Feels like he's a little over aggressive sometimes. Like sometimes he doesn't do the chop steps that you like when he's coming up to the ball carrier. He's just running at full speed, and that causes him to overrun the play. And he doesn't really have top level speed, so there's kind of a reason why he's doing that. He's trying to overcome his physical limitations. He's not really a really fast guy, so he kind of feels like sometimes I'll bet he has to go 100 miles an hour. And just generally speaking, I wonder how much of this stuff translates to the next level. Like 6 feet tall, is he going to get mossed in coverage a lot, or are his coverage skills from college going to carry over? I don't know. But that's the question we got to try to figure out here before we invest a higher pick in him. So overall, you've got the size concerns. You've got the fact that he's good at taking on blockers, which you hope he'll be able to do that in the NFL, but it's going to be harder. I don't think there's star potential with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. the way there is with the previous guys, but I do think he will probably end up being a good player because he is really smart. I'd say the risk becomes acceptable in the third round, so I pretty much agree with the consensus here. All right, that's Jeremiah Trotter Jr. One last linebacker who I think will probably go on day two. It's Cedric Gray of North Carolina. Been a guy that I've had my eye on for a while now. 21 when the season starts. Another one of these younger guys that can get better. 6'1.5", 234 pounds, which is bigger than I expected, which is nice. I thought he was going to be one of these 225 guys. He's not. 32.5-inch arms, 9-inch hands. Testing numbers were not stellar, but they were good enough. I thought there was some fear that he was going to run like a 4.7 40. 4.64 is passable, 67th percentile. 1.59 10-yard split is also passable. Obviously, there's better out there, but it's fine. His vertical jump and broad jump were both pretty good. So he did enough at the combine to prove that he belongs in the NFL on a physical level. ESPN really likes him, and so does Walter Football. They think he's in the second round. PFF and CBS have him in the fourth. And the mock draft database appropriately splits the difference and says third round. And I think he will probably end up around there, the third round. And if the aggregate is correct, then he just barely sneaks into the third round, therefore barely sneaking into day two. Insane production over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years combined, he has 106 or 266 tackles, 23 for loss, had 5 sacks last year, 3 interceptions over the last 2 years, 10 passes defensed, and 5 forced fumbles. PFF grades were good both years, although there was a little bit of a tail off in 2023, but he's still been an overall really good player for a couple years now. And again, he's probably going to get better because he's only 21. So what I can say about Cedric Gray in the positive, the numbers, I mean, the numbers are really, really stand out. Not a lot of guys are able to put up numbers like that. Even the guys that we've looked at who we've liked, like Edgerrin Cooper wasn't putting up tackle numbers like this. Although sometimes that's not always a good thing, or at least not a great thing. He's capable in man coverage as well. He can handle man coverage stuff. He's got enough speed to be able to do that. He's aggressive and smart in how he attacks the run game. He has a really good feel for being able to slide through gaps and make plays on the running back. I like the way that he attacks the running game, generally speaking. He slips through and past blockers smoothly. He's capable of working through the wash and coming up with the ball carrier. And even though he's not the fastest guy in the world, like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., he covers a ton of ground out there. So there's a sideline to sideline defender in here. He's probably also going to be able to do things like QB spy on athletic quarterbacks like Kyler Murray or Anthony Richardson. Even though he doesn't have top end speed, he did show an ability to QB spy them. Kind of like we saw with KJ Wright at the end of his career, who could still QB spy even though he wasn't that fast. All right. So the issues with Cedric Gray would be if a blocker connects with him, he can kind of get pushed out of the play because he is, at the end of the day, still a little bit on the smaller side and a little bit on the weaker side. So if he actually gets hit by a blocker, somebody squares up on him, he'll kind of get neutralized. His instincts aren't quite there. I'm a little bit wary of the fact. I like how he attacks the run game on a physical level, like his ability to trigger downfield, but his instincts of knowing where the play's going before the play starts may never be there at this point. It's hard to know. He is still young, but they haven't been there for a few years now. He misses a lot of tackles. I think he misses an average of 19 tackles a season over the last 3 years, so that's about a tackle and a half a game, which I know you look at the total tackle count and you say that's acceptable because he's making so many tackles, but there are some things he's doing, tackling, that I think could get cleaned up that would make that better. And sometimes he's just a little overly aggressive, which I think is kind of a byproduct of him being a little bit smaller and a little bit slower and needing to find a way to kind of make up for that. But I like him a lot. I acknowledge that he's not on the level of Cooper or Colson or Peyton Wilson because he doesn't have the athletic profile. But I like his effort. I like what he does against the run. I think he has a lot to offer at the NFL level. And third round feels fine by me. I would take him in the third round. I know he's going to split people a little bit on whether or not he's a third rounder or fourth rounder. To me, I would take him in the third round. I like him. I like what's going on here with Cedric Gray. And yeah, I would consider him to be the fifth and final likely day two linebacker in this draft. So in the middle of the draft, it's pretty good for linebacker stuff. The linebacker stuff gets a little bit hairier at the top because there isn't really a top. And the bottom is, well, we'll get to the bottom tomorrow. Let me know what you guys think. Cedric Gray, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., give me your thoughts. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Probably another video later today. If not, I'll see you tomorrow with more linebacker stuff. We'll take a look at the day three guys.